Welcome back, guys. I'm Gabe from the Search for Tiki. It is another night of 13 Nights of Tiki Frights. It is gargoyle hysteria out there. Everybody is in bedlam on the West Coast looking for their gargoyle mug from Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar. And we have Marcus Gonzalez here, one of the creative masterminds behind many of the Trader Sam's mugs. And I am super excited to chat with him. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Marcus, were you a part of the gargoyle bedlam today?
I did go down there and have a little visit. I hung out with a couple people out there and had some lunch, and people walked by and asked to have their mug signed and whatnot. So, yeah, I was there for a few hours. It was fun.
Did you get one?
I did not get one, but I hopefully will get one eventually. Well, I didn't get into the reservation thing in time or what have you.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I'm gonna bat my eyes or something and see what we can do later.
You was this the first time you'd been back on Disney property since February?
Yeah. So it's been like what, 8 months or something since I've been on property. So
That's
it was
crazy.
a little surreal to be walking down the sidewalks over there at the Disneyland Hotel. In that, like, oh yeah, I don't work here anymore.
I remember this place. Is it kind of like liberating?
I wouldn't say that it's liberating. It definitely feels different because even if you went in as a guest, and you were a cast member at the same time, you knew you were still working. So you had this different mentality. So walking around and going, this is what everybody else has gotten to enjoy over the years from like a guest perspective, where you're not going, oh, those lights are out, I should probably send an email to so and so, or the coffee mugs aren't in the coffee shop on display, I should probably email the manager and let them know. That filter is gone.
Yep. Now you can just kind of sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah.
In all of its madness.
That's right.
When you started working at Disney, I think you were there like 32 years, right? It was back in
1990 is when I hired in, right out of high school.
Holy cow. And you just, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
You just celebrated a birthday. So you literally, like, you graduated high school and you were in Disney.
Yeah. I mean, about maybe a week or so after I graduated, I went over there, and they didn't have any jobs when I first applied. I was literally halfway out the door, and they said, wait a minute. We have an opening for an interview later today for what was it called? I forgot what the fancy name was, but basically it was a dishwasher, but it sounded all fancy. I forget what the name was. I was like, oh, that's cool, and I went home and I told my brother, oh yeah, they're going to be interviewing me for this position, and to me it sounded like Gopher on the Love Boat, So I was like, hey, I'm going to do this fun job. And he's like, dude, you're washing dishes. I was like, oh. So I did that for a few months, like maybe 3 months, and then they wanted me to start cooking. So I started cooking at a place called the Tahitian Terrace, if anybody remembers.
Ooh.
That place.
Was that like right away? Like just after a few months?
Well, it just so happens I'm washing dishes that day. And the title was a steward. That's what it was. They're looking for a steward.
Oh, okay.
But I was over there washing dishes, and they were short-staffed. A cook or something called in sick, and my brother, who was working in that kitchen, said, "My brother has a lot of kitchen experience. You guys should pull him." And they said, "Do you know how to do this yet? Do you know how to do that yet?" And they said, "All right, let's show you really quick how to do this," and then just kind of threw me in, and then got trained the following week. But it's because I had previous cooking experience at home, and my brother basically saying, hey, this guy's, someone you guys want. So for a few summers, I was working at the Tahitian Terrace, and then going over to across the street to the Plaza Inn to cook during the not summer seasons.
How was the, so I've never experienced the Tahitian Terrace. I've only been since Trader Sam's. What was the Tahitian Terrace like?
The Tahitian Terrace was the best thing ever. It was my favorite all-time place to work, and it was also my favorite all-time place to go eat. you could get cool things like teriyaki New York strip steaks and lobster tails and ahi and mahi and
Dude,
teriyaki
you were
salmon.
supposed to tell me it sucked, so I didn't feel bad.
Oh my God, it didn't suck. It was the best thing ever. They had like a rock feature with the waterfall, and there was a full on luau show. So you had your traditional kind of Hawaiian presentation. So you had the siva api, and you had the a fire knife dancer come out and do his fire knife show. And when he was done, he'd run up to the waterfall and he'd jab his flaming blade into the water, and the water would catch on fire, and everybody was super amazed. And they would bring someone out on stage to kind of do a little hula and teach them how to shake their hips. And so it was all this. It was that plus the we had relatively simple but really good desserts: pineapple upside down cake, macadamia nut pie, which was like a pecan pie but with macadamia nuts, and a whole bunch of other different things that we were offering. It was a great show. It was people would come in, place their order, the show would start, we'd feed them, and then we'd get them out. So it was definitely, working as hard as we could, because as soon as you saw the first ticket come out of the printer, you're like, all right, it's showtime. You gotta bust your butt and push out as much food as quickly as you could.
Did they do one show a night?
No, it was. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 shows a night. So you started probably around 4 or 5. I think close to 5, because I think our shift started at 4:30, and then the last one would end somewhere around 9, 10 o'clock.
That sounds rough.
I mean, it's a kitchen environment, so you know what the expectations are, and everybody, no matter how hard they were working, loved working there. And it was still extremely tiki adjacent. It's not like they were selling tiki mugs or anything, but that was a location that would have been ripe for a good, developing something in that nature.
So what was it that happened to Tahitian Terrace?
Well, somebody thought it was a good idea to do some sort of refresh, and also make it a little bit more approachable from a family perspective.
Okay.
So they decided that it was probably the right time to put that one to sleep, and to come up with an idea where it's all Mediterranean cuisine. So you had like couscous and tabbouleh and yogurt, covered proteins like chicken and steak and in skewers, and the show would revolve around Aladdin. So they built the Cave of Wonder, and they had a little part of the show experience is someone would disappear into and slide down the mountain and stuff. So they built that whole thing, and I think that I'll tell you the thing I disliked the most from a cooking standpoint is the dessert. It was the same dessert that everybody got. They got a chocolate lamp filled with chocolate mousse, and they had like on a plate with this stuff called raspberry coulis. And our jobs as the cooks was to plate it, and then we had to make like this little swirly design. But then we had to mousse each one of those lamps and then put the lids on top. So making a whole bunch of those at a time was very sore on your back, and it was kind of boring because it was just like pipe, 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 and nothing terribly fancy about it. But people weren't super keen on the Mediterranean food, so they tried to adapt it. It didn't take off, I think, as well as they would have wanted to. So that place ended up being closed for a really long time, and then now it's what is Tropical Hideaway now. So
yep. Before we get into that, so did you grow up in Anaheim?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I grew up in Santa Ana, but Anaheim is kind of next door, so kind of grew up in this area, and a lot of at the time, my world wasn't very expansive, so Anaheim was definitely like out in places that I would go, but it was about your limit in terms of how that and Garden Grove. So my parents didn't have a lot of money growing up, so going to Disneyland was like a big treat. So before I started working there, we probably went there maybe 3-4 times. Most of those times being the times where they had ticket books. So that's just kind of gives you an idea of how long ago that was.
I didn't go until I was like 25.
Oh, well, there you go.
But I live in New England, so it took me a while. It's a lot more expensive to fly out there.
It is
from New England, but it's getting more and more expensive as time goes on. Any Disney fan knows.
Yep.
But yeah, so is that like a common thing? Like people in the Anaheim area, like because they're just such a giant place that when people come out of high school, that's where they go. They go to
it's one of the places you go. I think it's one of the default. Like, I know my brother, he started at Disney when he was, I think, 16 and a half. And they actually sent him a letter saying, something to the effect of, you're a great student and this, and we'd like you to participate, and come work at Disney.
That's how they get you?
Well, that's how they appeal to him. And for me, I just went over and applied because, everybody talked about how well they paid, and talked about how, you're going to work a pretty good amount of hours, and it's a fun environment. So, and, definitely friendly for people that are going to college, because at the time, when it wasn't busy season, which we actually, at one point in time, believe it or not, had parts of the year where we weren't super busy.
No.
So those parts of the year, we'd only work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the park would close at like 8 p.m.
Yep. So how did you go from, washing dishes, chef, Tahitian terrace, product development manager?
Well, I was cooking, and I was cooking at Tahitian Terrace, Plaza Inn, and at the Cask Commissary, the in between, for about 5 years. And even then, it was one of those things when I was over on the other side that the chef Chris Justison came over to the Cask Commissary, and he asked for a burger for a VIP. So, when I cooked it, I made sure it looked pretty and stuff, and I handed it to him. He goes, "What's this? This is the burger you asked for." He's like, "But it's pretty." I said, "But we eat with our eyes." So you shouldn't be here. You need to be in the kitchen. So I got pulled into the kitchen and then cooked there for about 5 years. And it was about the time that I was getting my music degree. So my first degree is in music education. And I really needed to focus on finishing and practicing. And I was getting a lot of emphasize the importance to finish school. And in order to finish school in my degree, I needed to spend more time in the practice room. So I needed to find a job that was not as physically stressful as working at the kitchen. So a friend of mine told me that I could work as a secretary. And so I applied for a job, and they didn't think I knew how to type or use a computer. So they hired me on a probationary basis. And they said, you need to be able to type 130 words a minute, no mistakes. And do you know how to use WordPerfect? This is how long ago it was. How to use WordPerfect and a couple of other things. And I'm going, yeah, use all that stuff for fun. So I was on probation for about 3 months, and then they offered me a full-time job as a secretary, which worked out from a music standpoint because even though I'd work until midnight, I'm not physically tired. So I'd drive to school and then practice in the practice rooms until like 3 a.m, and then go home. So in that, I started doing some very light graphic design work for the music fraternity that I was in, and I was starting to do flyers for parties that other cast members were having at Disneyland. So they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a cast member party. Can you put something together?" And at the time, it was the true cut and paste idea where I cut out images from a clip art book and paste those in and photocopy them. But everybody liked what I was doing, so I started doing Spanish translations and doing Spanish versions of the menus that we had in the parks and a little bit of this and that. And it's when I realized, wow, I really love the whole art thing. I want to expand that and learn more. So I was going to quit, and I was going to go to the Art Institute to get an art degree. And they asked me why I wanted to leave. I said, well, I want to grow my career, and I know that I'm going to go to school full time, and you guys probably can't support that. And they made me an offer. They said, can you hold on a second? We want to make you an offer, but it's going to take a couple of weeks. Okay. So they came back, and I gave them a list of stuff that I didn't think anyone was going to even be okay with.
Is this Disney?
I gave them a list of the things that I would like from from a position perspective. It was mainly focused all the graphic design stuff. So, the graphic design based computer, digital tablet, all that kind of stuff. And then they said yes. And they also helped pay for part of school. And I was just very surprised that all of that had happened. So I ended up going to school full time and working full time, which was rough after like the, third year. But I got it done. And the cool thing is I got to do design work that was applicable in my class. And then I was doing classwork that was applicable to my design work at Disney. So it was definitely a win-win.
Made it a little easier to balance the two.
Yeah. And it was just basically that light graphic design kind of stuff I did first. And I remember a boss came up to me and showed me, those straight wall popcorn buckets, the ones that just have the printed art on the outside. And it was basically T-shirt art on both sides of Nightmare Before Christmas. And she goes, "What do you think of this?" I said, "I think it's kind of ugly, as a matter of fact." And I said, and she asked me why. I said, "Look, it looks to me like we just slapped art on there." And she says, "Well, basically the way we do it is merchandise gives us their style guide, and it's like T-shirt art. So you pick which T-shirt art you want, and they print it on the bucket." I said, "Yeah, but you have basically your canvas is this rectangle, instead of just the two images.
Yeah.
Why don't we design something that kind of tells a story?" "Well, why don't you show us what you're thinking about?" So 2-ish weeks later, I came back with an illustration, and it was the first one we did. And it was for Nightmare Before Christmas Haunted Mansion Holiday, where Jack Skellington was holding presents, and there was like the mayor in the back and Zero flying around. And they're like, "Oh, well, let's send this through and get it approved." It got approved by Tim Burton and all that, and we made it. And all of a sudden, sales like quadrupled because people were buying them as a collectible, not as an upsell, which is what it originally was.
Something that they want to take home. It's not really so much about the popcorn.
Extra popcorn, yeah.
And now, of course, we have all these elaborate popcorn buckets. A little
We
bit
do.
more than just a slightly, not full 360-degree wrap, but pretty close on the popcorn buckets. When did the first popcorn bucket come around? Do you have any idea?
The first of those shaped ones or the printed ones?
Yeah, the fancy, the ones we know and love.
That would have been, I can't exactly say the date. I think it was about 10 to 15 years ago. The first one was the Ghost Mickey popcorn bucket. So it was basically Mickey looked like he had a sheet over him.
Okay.
And that's the first one we did. And it was a lot of convincing people that we need to give this a shot and see what happens. And when we released it here in California, and we also released it in Florida. And I was in Florida the day that they launched, and they were selling it at the Mickey's Not So Scary party. And you saw people that had like 4 to 6 of them in their hands, because at the time, we did the little plastic strap, so that's about the most they could carry. And then I think for me, probably the one that really got me was seeing a little kid running down Main Street, like holding it, and like you see that joy on his face about how happy he is to have it. So I was like, and that's why we make those. People get all excited about that. That's what makes the difference.
Did you have a lot of time working at Disney to like go out and just kind of like explore the parks and see?
Well, we were strongly encouraged to, and sometimes it's like, hey, let's go grab some lunch at a restaurant. So you go to the restaurant and you just I like to observe. That's always been the thing, watching what the guests are buying, watching their interactions and even their conversations, because sometimes it could be something as simple as a guest telling another guest, "Man, wouldn't it be cool if they had more Nightmare stuff, or wouldn't it be cool if they had more Star Wars stuff?" So, you kind of start hearing more and more of that. You start to think, maybe there are some things that we could probably look at, what we can work on, and getting a better idea too. Like I remember I was at a friend's house, and they had a Disney, a person that liked to collect a lot of Disney stuff, and she was a parent, and she goes, "Oh, you make this stuff?" I said, "I do." She goes, "Can I say something?" I was like, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble." And I said, "Sure. What's up?" And she said, "Let me tell you, I don't like those plastic straws where it's like the character and you drink through the straw and it goes through the character." And I said, "I'm curious as to why." And she says, "Well, my kids like them, and it's an impulse buying. They nag the crap out of me to buy them, But then, they take them home and it ends up under the sofa and it, ends up here and there. And eventually when they're not looking, I just throw it away. And I thought to myself, well, that's no fun. The whole point of making this stuff is that you want them to keep it, right?
Yep.
So, after talking to her, realizing, well, it's the straw part that's the pain in the butt part and the one that the kids will use and then forget about. So, that's when we looked at, what if we do a backpack clip, attach it to the loop of the straw so the straw can be put in the recycle bin when they're done messing with it. But at least, the backpack clip gets stuck to their backpack and they can collect it. And that's exactly what ended up happening is all these people are buying these things to put on their backpack. So it's kind of like now I'm showing off, look at all the cool different ones that come out, and I've collected all of them.
When you're looking at this kind of stuff, like how much freedom did you have to just create products that you were interested in? Or was it like you have to create this popcorn bucket always, and then you just kind of make the best of what you were assigned by Disney?
Well, there are definitely some restrictions, especially when you start thinking about storyline and all that other stuff. But I was given a lot of freedom to come up with things. I mean, usually when I go to high schools and talk about what my job was about, I usually start off with, I get paid to daydream. My job is to come up with the ideas and propose them. So I had a lot of freedom to propose ideas. And after proposing them, it was a matter of whether or not it was going to stick, and someone wanted to either take the risk or do whatever it is that we're doing, knowing that that wasn't a risk at all. So it was a little bit of both, but to be perfectly honest, especially after we started doing the premiums, it was a lot easier to propose an idea, to show an idea, and to have it made. And sometimes it just took a little bit of convincing. And as my bosses know and knew at the time, I always had something in my back pocket. That was what I was known for. They're like, you probably have something in your back pocket. Because I showed it to someone, nobody liked it, but sometimes you had to let it mature, another year, 2, 3 years. And then at that point, everybody's receptive to wanting, hey, what can we do that's cool Star Wars? I mean, look, what do you think of doing an AT-AT popcorn bucket? Oh, that's awesome. But 2 years before, they were kind of like, we don't think anyone's going to buy that. No one wants to walk around in the park with that because it's too big. And, so that comes out and nobody cares about the bulk because they just want it.
Yeah.
Yep. They're stuck on strollers or whatever, but they're buying it and they're buying as many as they can.
Oh yeah. You see people with 18 bags of blah, 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 blah of this, that, and the everything. That's probably why they do the limits now on all the merchandise, because it's become such a eBay flipping thing for all of this fancy merchandise.
Yeah.
When you said like premium products earlier, did you mean like the popcorn buckets, the tiki mugs, all that?
Yeah. So the category I named or referred to the category as premium. So premium basically was anything that wasn't printed. So like something like a mug that has just some art on it is not premium. It's you're basically buying an off-the-shelf item and putting your art on it, as opposed to like the stuff here. You see the Frankenstein and the Mickey and the Jack Skellington. Those are all things that require tooling and require someone to make it so that you can produce that shaped product. So whether it's a sipper or a popcorn bucket, and technically tiki mugs fall under that category as well, because even though you're not paying thousands of dollars in tooling like you do in plastic, it still requires having molds and having it be dimensional to an extent. Whether it's cylindrical and just has like a bas relief thing, or if it's a little bit more figural. So, you see like the piranha. The piranha definitely is more figural than it is functional. As some people, even when we did the piranha, would question, how are you going to drink out of it? And it's like, well, the straw goes in it. So, but nobody can drink out of it.
The piranha is not that hard to drink out of.
Well, no.
Maybe at the time when it came out, but now seeing some of the other mugs that have come out since, not just at Trader Sam's, but in general, like the piranha is totally fine.
But at the time, managers and people at the location were also kind of wondering, how are guests gonna drink out of that? But they prepare it, they garnish it, they put the straw, but they were thinking about life beyond the park. Is like when you take it home, you know, you have to kind of drink out of the side of its mouth. And I said, more than likely, people are going to still throw straws in it when they're at home.
Yep. That's why we got our reusable glass cocktail straws from Surfside Sips.
There you go. See, there's another one that, if you're drinking out of the lip is going to be challenging to drink out of. But a lot of tiki mugs, you don't drink directly out of anyway.
No, that would be weird. I guess there are. I have seen a few people do it, but I that would be weird to me.
Yeah,
write in the comments if you're watching this whether you drink directly out of the ceramic mugs. I've always wondered, like, so you create the products, your team creates the products. Do you have any involvement in terms of how those products are distributed at that point, or is that like another department?
Well, so we were this, as my boss used to refer to, the small but mighty team. It was basically 3-4 of us that kind of collaborated on all this. So, I would come up with the designs and we would talk about it in the group, which designs we think are best, maybe something we want to tweak to make it better. But then also we would shop that around. So we were responsible for all of it, getting the approvals through all the different channels, because, it's Disney, it's a big company. Also working that whole thing. So we were cradle to grave, came up with the ideas. We would source vendors. We would pick vendors. We would work through that whole process of reviewing, going from sketch to reviewing 3D. And most of the time we tried to handle the 3D in-house. If it wasn't done in-house, it was done through the manufacturer. But most of the time it was Tim Woolweber. So he would realize the sketch and make it more of a functional 3D item. And those 3Ds were sent to the factories for them to make. So, yeah. And then, on our team, there's a person that was helping along the way, but also working with the factories and working with the manufacturer to make sure how is it going to be packed, what ship it's going to go on, what date, is it going to, all of it going to fit in one overseas container? Do we need to split it up? Is it not fitting a full container? What else is going to go in there? Kind of a thing. So, and then we worked on having it brought in, we worked on having it warehoused, and then we worked on pushing it to the location. And, part of that also involved collaboration with the operations team and saying, this is what we're thinking of doing for you. What do you think? And, try to get them some early samples so that if they wanted to build a cocktail, they could. And, having the time to kind of figure out how they're going to garnish and pour and do all that stuff. So we worked throughout the whole process for sure.
We got some feedback about whether people drink out of the mugs. Joey Levesque says, I slurp them Mai Tai straight out of the clay, baby. So nice. Joey's proven me wrong. This guy, Tackle Fork, says straw always. So it appears to be split. The verdict is still out, Marcus, on whether people drink directly from their clay. I know that a lot of the mug releases at Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar are handled very differently than the mug releases at Trader Sam's Grotto.
Yes.
In terms of the rollout. But oftentimes the mugs are very similar in terms of it's the same sculpt, just different glazes. One will release on one coast and then the other coast gets the other one. So is the product development team at Disney, is there one product development team, or is there a California version, a Florida version?
There's one product development team, and the product development team was responsible for Disneyland Resort, Walt Disney World, Disney Paris, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. So it was a big scope. But from a product development standpoint, it was just that small but mighty team. In terms of operational rollout, it was up to the specific operators, the location, to decide how they were going to roll it out. And part of it has to do with demographic. Part of it has to do with capacity at the location, and how they perceive the business. So, Enchanted Tiki Bar is a pretty well-oiled machine, and they know what they need to do. And also, California tends to have the higher interest and the largest demand. So, Disneyland Hotel was the one that was getting these lines forming in the parking lot at like 2 a.m. And, having to move those lines from the Trader Sam's area to the parking lot was pretty significant because people were being really noisy and people are staying at the hotel that were.
Yeah, it's not what you want when you're paying $550 a night at the Disneyland Hotel.
Exactly. So when they switched to the phone model, the ordering mobile order, I know it has its challenges, but I think overall it's definitely made things a lot smoother, and it's eliminated that need for those super long lines of people coming in at the crack of dawn to try to get there first, because you can get on the phone first, and if you secure your reservation, then it's worth doing the trek because you have a better idea of being able to get whatever it is you wanted to get.
And you don't have to wait 10 hours.
Exactly. And then find out
you wake up at a certain time. Yeah. And then find out you didn't get it. Exactly. I do wonder if because like just Disneyland in general has a lot more locals, I feel like, and then Disney World is very tourist based. So I feel like Enchanted Tiki Bar, maybe they have the regulars at the bar, whereas Grotto caters more to people that just want to drink on vacation. So,
well, and part of it is, okay, so both the East Coast and the West Coast both have annual pass holders, but the annual pass holders here on the West Coast tend to be that repeat visitor that comes every once or twice a month sometimes. And they're the ones that are willing to come for a short period of time to get something, whether it's a limited edition merchandise item or it's a tiki mug or it's a popcorn bucket, because of the way the annual pass program was structured, they could easily just pop in, grab a popcorn bucket and pop out. And they're the ones that in their minds could justify getting a tiki mug as well, because they're used to just coming in to wait. So it isn't the same looking at it from an annual passport perspective in Florida. But, and the mentality was that, yes, it's predominantly focused, just everything purchasing, merchandise development, focused more on that international guest, which they do have a good amount of. But, what they've seen in the last few years is that they have more and more locals wanting to get tiki mugs and wanting to get a Figment popcorn bucket or whatever else. So it's starting to shift over there. More and more people are starting to have an eye out for those specialty items, because honestly, those specialty items really aren't focused towards the international traveler. And that was one of the challenges. Tiki mugs aside, you've seen how big that Figment popcorn bucket is. An international traveler may not want it because it's not going to fit in their suitcase.
If I can pull up a picture of this.
And I only know of one regular in Florida. That's Jay McGuire.
Jay McGuire. Oh well, of course he's a regular, but he more than makes up for all the other regulars that they are missing.
That's right. I mean,
one Jay McGuire is like 300 Disneyland pass holders.
That's right. The good thing is that he has the liver of 300 annual pass holders. So,
yeah, but he's always hooking people up on mug stuff. I don't know if he wants that shout out or not, because he probably is like
he just left a comment in the comment section. So,
oh really?
He put the bullseye on his forehead.
Okay. Well, yeah. So everybody, the next time you want a gargoyle, there's only one person you should contact, and it's Jay McGuire. Send him a private direct message on Facebook. He loves it. But no, so I want to, if I can, I'm going to try to pull up a photo here so people can see exactly what I'm talking about. Share screen. One thing I'm curious about, okay, so this is the Monstro mug, just as an example. So this was kind of a tie-in with the Pinocchio film that was released on Disney+. I know how long ceramics takes. Ceramics takes a long time. So is the product development team at Disney like clued in on the movies from the very early stages, or like how else would this mug be pulled off?
Well, okay, two things. Yes, you're allowed to see certain things as early as they're willing to show it to you. Sometimes the different departments within the company, they'll be 6 months out into release, and they still don't have a style guide out or anything for you to develop, which is a bit of a problem because even this stuff here, the popcorn buckets and stuff, that takes 12 to 18 months to produce. That's from idea to going through the vendors and all that, and then working on the 3Ds and making sure you get the first sample. Does it look right? Are the hooks for the straps in the right place? All that kind of stuff. Tiki mugs have a little bit of shorter development time simply because the tooling doesn't take as much, but it still takes time. So you're still looking at, in a perfect world, at least a year. But to be honest, this Monstro one that you showed, we weren't developing it with the idea of coinciding with Pinocchio. We weren't even sure what to do with Pinocchio. It was intended as part of a series at looking at Trader Sam's, doesn't stay at Trader Sam's all the time. So that he's traveled. You have all that stuff on the walls showing where his travels were around the world. So you know what? The extension of that methodology and the fact that he's traveled, he's traveled to Disney, he's traveled to Walt Disney World, he's seen things, and he's interpreting the things that he's seen. So, like the elephant, regardless of what you think of the elephant, that was an idea of, he saw, interpreted. And so that's a way of bringing in Disney IP into Trader Sam's to appeal to the Disney guest as well as the Tiki collector, and trying to come up with some really cool ideas. So I'll be perfectly honest with Monstro. I've had that one in my back pocket for a really long time. I find the right opportunity to bring it in. So I think it was not that long after the whole COVID thing was happening. That was one of the proposed items that I pushed out, and I said, we should do a Monstro one. I want it to look like it's swimming through the table, so it has all that, the cool water kind of effect. And I want it to look as much as the entrance of the attraction as possible. So that's where we landed.
So I know you got into product development. The first thing that you worked on was the popcorn bucket. It was the wrap around image, the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay. Trader Sam's Tiki Bar opened May 2011. Were you in product development at that time?
Yeah, so I was already doing stuff for product development, and little side note on the premium products. Part of doing premium products was I was getting a little bored of just doing the printed stuff, and I wanted to do something more. So Mickey was that challenge of trying to do 3D stuff, and let's, can we do something different? And the manufacturers were a little bit reticent to do stuff because no one did that before.
Yep.
And we had one company that took the risk with us to do the Ghost Mickey, and that kind of sparked that movement, right? And around the same time, Trader Sam's started happening. So when it first opened, there was a lot of Tiki Farm off-the-shelf stuff that was brought in. WDI worked on a lot of partnered with an outside artists, Kevin and Jody, and developed some ideas and some designs for the mugs that we first introduced. And then after that, the first one I did that was, we started looking at the seasonal program. The first one that I did was the Jack pumpkin. And, that's where we created Halloween, and we wanted to do like a one night only edition as well as like an open edition that we were going to sell during the rest of the time after the show.
This one right here, right?
Yep. So there was this one, and then there was the brown one that's basically the same one, just a different glaze. And interestingly enough, when this came out, there's a lot of people that were kind of poo-pooing the design and going, this isn't strictly Tiki. I don't want it. It's a garbage. It's ugly. Especially because it's not Tiki, I'm not going to buy it. And then this became the everybody's unicorn.
Yeah, it's one of those mugs where like a lot of people didn't want it, and now if you want it, especially I think the orange is the rarer of the two, right? That one goes for like, last I checked, it was in the $400 range.
Yeah, and I see people post on Facebook every once in a while, man, I would really like to get this one. I didn't know it existed or whatever. And I'm going, I remember when nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
Said it was garbage.
Are you still waiting for that to happen on the elephants?
I'm seeing that there's a little bit of a mixed bag on the elephants, but
I do think they're making a comeback.
On that one, I'll be honest too. On that one, that's not the design that I wanted. I originally wanted the mom laying down the way she sits in the Jungle Cruise, holding her baby. That's what I was looking for. I was looking more of the mother's embrace kind of thing, but also with the holiday Christmas twist. That was the original scope of the design. But we had something happened with the manufacturer, and the manufacturer insisted on saying that this is the design that we wanted. And this is what we rolled out. And I'm going, this is not what I wanted. This doesn't feel endearing. It doesn't feel nostalgic because it's not tying that in to the actual park experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I still don't think the hate was warranted, though. To be honest,
I think it was way too harsh. To be perfectly honest, I mean, it didn't hurt my feelings, but it was kind of harsh for what it was, And I thought to myself, for what this is, I don't know why people are having such a challenge with liking it, because it wasn't. I mean, it's not like it's just a ball of clay that has Christmas lights on it. It's a decent design. I mean, it's a good design, to be perfectly honest, but it wasn't a design that was originally intended. And for me, that's the only issue I have, is that it wasn't the intended design, and I wish I could have done that. I mean, for all you know, that design could have still been perceived as a crappy design, and no one would have wanted to buy it. But I'm never going to know, because we never produced what that one was going to look like.
Yeah. I do think it kind of signals... Say it again?
Huh? Go ahead.
I do think it kind of signals a change, right? Because initially with the premium products, you're kind of taking a chance. You don't know if they're going to sell. Disney's putting money into something that could be a stinking turd. They have no idea, right? And now you start making mugs. The mugs are selling. And then to have this like 360 or 180, I should say, degree flip where like people are actively upset about a mug that came out, like that just shows how significant the mugs at Trader Sam's became. That you would actually have like an angry mob of people that, in my opinion, is completely unwarranted. But just the fact that that existed showed how invested people had become in a very short amount of time with these mugs at Trader Sam's.
Yep. And in retrospect, one of my bosses many, many moons ago, his name is Gary Machetti. He was definitely one of the advocates of pushing ideas out. And I was coming to him sometimes a couple times an hour going, I have this idea that I think maybe we should do. And he always said yes to all of them. And at one point I said, you keep saying yes to all of these. Do you not, some of them have to not be that great. He goes, well, they all sound really good. But ultimately he said, this is the thing. We can't just produce all winners. At some point we have to produce something that isn't going to be well received, and from that it's a learning experience. To your point, there may be some nuances of what the elephant was that we weren't hitting the right mark, and part of it, in my opinion, has to do with they weren't, to the more purists, they weren't tiki enough, and part of that had to do with, as Jay was pointing out there about the glaze being too much. It's even the little details of putting in the Christmas light colors. It was more painterly. It was more like I grabbed my acrylic paint set and just did a few dabs on there. If these were approached with more tiki colors and given those traditional tiki finishes and maybe even a wood grain, that probably could have changed that whole thing completely. So looking back and looking at what we do in terms of tiki mugs, you try to still give it that Polynesian
kind of like rustic, like it's been hanging out in a shack somewhere.
You also almost always, I'm not going to say always because I'm sure there's some out there that we may not have looked at. Well, not the gargoyle, but the zombie is a good example. That one's still smooth. People love that. But generally speaking, most of the limited designs, we incorporate some sort of wood grain, even if it gets swallowed up by the glaze. We still kind of try to grain it a little bit.
Yep. Monster is a good example of the one that was just in Grotto.
Yeah.
I don't think I showed that one, but I can pull it up. Right here.
Yeah. Personally, that one's my favorite because it's that exposed bisque look, where it's not necessarily the clay body, but it looks like it's exposed clay body. It's very much aligned to more of the tiki aesthetic overall.
It does kind of show, though, that more work is not necessarily better when it comes to products, because like that is easier. It's easier to do a glaze and then a white on something than it is to do all those hand-painted light bulbs on the elephant.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things is, if you look at a lot of more of the artisanal stuff, whether it's not even have to be tiki mugs, it could be a bowl, a cup that someone made in their studio. Generally speaking, it's more minimalistic. You reduce it down to one or two glazes, maybe a couple of stains and finishes or a wipe, and that's it. Because you're letting the artistic nature of the design show through, right? So you get to enjoy the aesthetic of what went into putting the whale together, rather than having so much other stuff that kind of it becomes visual noise.
Yeah, it's distracting you.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't quite understand what it's like. Should it be on a Christmas shelf? Should it be in my tiki mug? Should it be here, there? I've got one. This is one of my personal favorites, which I don't know. This may be a Kevin and Jody one, but let's do a giveaway. So be careful what you say, because I'm going to ask the audience a question, and whoever gets it correctly in the comments first will get to take home some stuff from the Black Lagoon Room. We're doing double giveaways. So we got 2 pins from the Black Lagoon Room, Fish Fry Till I Die, and this little zombie here drinking a cocktail. We're also going to get 2 Black Lagoon Room swizzle sticks. The question is, I've got this mug here, a shipwreck barrel from Trader Sam's, and it holds my swizzle sticks. It has an addition written on the bottom of it. What is the addition written on the bottom of this mug? First person to guess it correctly in the comments will get to take home some Black Lagoon Rum pins. Is this one of Kevin and Jody's?
Yes, that is the Kevin and Jody.
Because this so the original lineup, which would be this one, Krakatoa, or the Krakatoa was
barrel, the hippopotami, the original Oa bowl. Those were all the ones that they had designed. And with the hippopotami, their version we originally introduced as a glass version, because before we even switched to the glass one, we were doing that off the shelf Mai Tai one that they sell it like Red Robin or whatever. It's that Libby a tiki mug that everybody has. But the glass one had some problems because some of them they suffered glass shock at the factory. So when they came to the restaurant, sometimes they were cracking or shattering on location, or the bases were coming off.
Is that from the temperature change from like the hot dishwasher to the cold ice?
Well, yeah, but what happens is when you're doing glass, especially if you're hand blowing glass, you still have to put it in the kiln. You still have to cool it down, and it has to cool down at a very even, slow rate. And what happened in that particular case is there was a door that was open, and a cross breeze came in, so part of it cooled faster than the rest of it. So it already had like the stress in the glass happening, so that's what ended up happening. Which is also why aren't we doing this as ceramic? We don't know. So we just ended up switching those to ceramic, and that's what we've been doing with Papa Mai Tai since then. Which apparently everybody likes the ceramic one quite a bit.
Yeah, we love the ceramics. That's Angela's, my girlfriend's favorite of the mugs. Well, I do think we have a winner of not this mug, but of the pins. You can't have my mug. It's actually a trick question. I don't know if I can show this here, but it says first edition, but there was a mug that came before this. So the person that got it correct, Joe Craw XS, congratulations. Send me an email, admin@searchfortiki.com, and claim your pins. Halloween, so you did the Jack. Why did you go with Jack? What was the inspiration behind Jack Skellington?
Well, it's not Jack Skellington. It looks very Jack Skellington-esque.
Okay.
But the idea was that it was supposed to just look like a carved pumpkin. So, we just wanted to do something that tied to Halloween, because part of what we wanted to do was to launch these Halloween events. We wanted to do the Halloween luau and do a release party and just kind of see how that would work out and stuff. And for those 2 years that we did it, it was doing really well. And we had hoped to. We were in the process of starting to bring it back before COVID happened.
They're gone and messed up everything.
Well, those Jungle Cruise mugs were supposed to coincide with the release of the film, and we had big plans what we were going to do, and we were going to have a Jungle Cruise release party, and the studios were like, "Oh, we might be able to bring The Rock in," and it was we were super excited about all these great things that were going to happen, and then the movie got delayed because of COVID, and it got delayed
and
some
they got
more
delayed again.
We'll release them whenever they come out.
So The Rock didn't come.
Oh, sorry, David, but my chair is going down.
Uh-oh.
There. It started to lower, and I'm going, wait a minute.
Yes. Marcus, we're losing you to the screen. Yeah, so you're talking about this one, right?
Yep.
The Jungle Boat?
Yeah.
I love all the
was the
details
one
on this one. You got the little Mickey hat here on the character. And this was
that was Tim. The great thing about that is we had talked about what can we come up with that's a Jungle Cruise boat, and we definitely wanted a Jungle Cruise boat. So when Tim and I started going back and forth about what we wanted and what we thought would be great to put on there, he added those little touches, which was awesome because sometimes, especially for me, it's more about let's get this one done and get it pushed out. Okay, you covered the vision. Let's move on. So adding the little touches with like the Mickey head, the hat, and all that kind of stuff was great, because those are the things, especially for Disney files, not just Tiki files, they notice those things, and those are the things that make it just that little more extra.
A little more extra, which is what you kind of want when you're, buying one of your premium products from the theme parks. When did you and Tim Woolweber are kind of like the dynamic duo, if you will, or it seems like you're the dynamic duo for a lot of the mugs at Trader Sam's, at least in recent years. How did you two meet? When was your first project?
Well, interestingly, so Tim worked and still works in entertainment art. So, when they're doing shows and they're building sets and stuff, so the graphics and the backgrounds and all that were the things that him and a few other guys worked on. So I was utilizing him and Scott Tolson a lot on some design work, for my mugs and all that other stuff. And then when I started to need to do more Tiki work, Tim had an affinity for that, and we would just kind of collaborate back and forth. And then through that process, he was also taking the time to learn some 3D software. So this was good practice for him to start to do that. And the more and more we started to do more, it also expanded his repertoire, and he started to be able to do more, not just for me. So, as a result, Tim started doing not just the design, but the 3D work for a lot of things that Tiki Farm was producing. So he did, like that Lock, Shock, and Barrel Tiki mug that Mondo pushed out.
Mondo, yep.
Yeah, so he designed that. He's designed a few other things for them and for Tiki Farm. Lower my camera instead of adjusting my chair because it keeps going down.
Do it up. I got these guys. So these, I think, were the next one for my Halloween. The hitchhiking ghosts. We're missing the black one, but we got the red, the blue, and the green here. Why the hitchhiking ghosts? Did you go through like a brainstorming process of different characters and properties? Obviously, you've done more since.
Yeah.
But what was the initial draw to the hitchhiking ghost?
I think we kind of gravitated here mainly because we had already done the Halloween, the Jack mug that wasn't really Jack Skellington.
That wasn't really Jack.
It was Jack adjacent. So we were kind of already saying, well, we've kind of people see it as Jack Skellington, so we've kind of dipped our toe. It kind of ties into Haunted Mansion Holiday. Why don't we use Haunted Mansion Holiday as the limited edition? And keep in mind, at the time, the only limited editions or special editions that we were doing were Halloween based. So what made the most sense that we could develop that would fit for Halloween, but if for whatever reason we didn't sell out, it could carry us through the end of the year, right? Without being like, well, it's Halloween, we shouldn't sell anymore.
Yep.
So we both kind of landed on, hey, let's do Haunted Mansion. And there's so much that we can glean from a Haunted Mansion perspective that we felt that there's a lot of product that we could do. So although I don't remember if we landed specifically on the hitchhiking ghost immediately, but I think we were close, because I think when we were looking at that, we were looking at what are the core characters that people identify with at the mansion, right? So you had the Hatbox Ghost, you had the hitchhiking ghost, you had the old dude with the dog, and there's a few others, and we didn't want to touch Nightmare from an approval and royalty perspective, but so we just kind of was like, what can we glean from? And the hitchhiking ghosts were definitely ones that we were able to do. And again, this was in Tim's wheelhouse too, because not only was he starting to do the tiki mugs with me, but he's also, I don't know if anybody knows, part of what he did and continues to do on the entertainment arts side is the gingerbread house
Which is insane.
Yeah. And that thing's built out of all gingerbread. The chefs put all that stuff together, and they're based off of Tim's designs. And it's an experience.
Huge kudos to Tim Woolweber. That's every time I go to Disneyland at the holidays, that's like the one thing I must do is I must go to the Haunted Mansion and I must see the gingerbread house of the year.
Yeah, I dig the Haunted Mansion. There's only two rides that I really like to go on, generally speaking, at Disneyland. It's a Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
So, I mean, even with Galaxy's Edge and stuff, those are fun. But my go-tos are still Haunted Mansion and
Pirates of the Caribbean. So why no Pirates of the Caribbean mugs?
There's several reasons why, and we tried to do some for a while, but a lot of times, I think I mentioned this earlier, kind of in passing. So you kind of don't want to necessarily touch things that are going to involve royalties, especially if you're not sure what the royalties are like. And
so meaning anything that has like a movie based on it.
Well, yeah. I mean, with Pirates of the Caribbean, there's royalties associated with it because, like it or not, it's connected to the film, even though it came first. But that's along those lines. Like, we developed stuff for Avatar when Avatar Land opened over in Florida, right? And a lot of people didn't realize, even though we technically own it, there's still royalties associated with it. So royalties still had to be paid at some point. So generally speaking, most people don't want to go down the royalty route. So you kind of avoid the ones that you can pay for. So you look at it more from all right, what do we own that nobody else has any ties to? And that's what you kind of go after.
So when you stick to the attractions like It's a Small World with the Club 33 mugs, those, because the only payout would essentially be to Disney. And since Disney owns it, that's free game.
Yeah, I mean, unless that was designed by, even if it was designed internally and someone owned the rights to it, like Nightmare Before Christmas still carries a royalty because even though it fell under the Disney umbrella, and Tim Burton was working for Disney, he basically asked for the rights, and Disney wasn't sure what was going to happen with that intellectual properties. Or like, yeah, you can have
Yep.
rights to the characters, which is what he got, which was great for him, But that's why for Nightmare stuff, it's still he looks at everything. So if you come up with a pencil that has Nightmare stuff, it still has to go to him. So if he's on
He
location,
got signed off.
in the Himalayas filming some film, they have to get it either to him there or wait till he comes back to his hotel so that he can review it.
That's awesome. Frustrating, but also kind of awesome. Kudos to him. There's a lot of times when people don't get the rights to their stuff, and they regret it later on. So,
well, even like there's a good amount of people out there that have played those cards right. So you have like Johnny Depp that reviews everything that may or may not have his likeness. Pirates of the Caribbean, the skull in the movie logo is actually his scanned skull, so he gets the royalty from that. And you even have like Keanu Reeves. There's a structure of what people have to pay for his likeness. So if it goes on a shot glass, it's this percentage. If it goes on a popcorn bucket, it's that percentage. So there's all these different, structures that certain actors set up.
I was pulling up the Hitchhiking Ghosts again. Do you think this is when the Trader Sam's mania started?
Yeah, probably, because although my Halloween did really well, the Jack mugs, we sold them out. It didn't seem that there was the fervor, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have massive lines of people waiting or any of that kind of stuff. And everything changed when we did the Hitchhiking Ghosts because everybody wanted them. And then not only did they want them, but Grog Grotto has their own edition. So it's that now setting up a way of how many can I get so that I can trade for one from the Grog Grotto, right?
And that was the first mug to release kind of simultaneously.
Yeah.
At both bars, I believe.
Yeah.
Let's do another giveaway while we're talking about Grog Grotto here. We're going to give away some Kim Bang Swizzle Sticks. So those people watching, I'm going to ask you a question. First person to guess it correctly in the comments will get to take home some Kim Bang Swizzle Sticks. And the question is, when did Grog Grotto open? What year did Grog Grotto open? First person in the comments will get the Kim Bang Swizzles.
David Calavita, just so you know, there is, maybe there's no Mr. Toad Tiki mug, but there's a Mr. Toad popcorn bucket that just came out this week.
Ooh, which park?
Magic Kingdom. It's really cool too because it's got working wheels and all that. It came out exactly as we intended, so it's a great design.
We do have the right answer for when Grog Grotto opened, and it was Mike Sarney. You got it first, March 2015. Congratulations. You get some Kim Bang Swizzle Sticks. Was it kind of a surreal thing to see people going crazy for your mugs, the stuff that you had worked on? Do you remember?
It was surreal when like social media exploded with people wanting this stuff, and then seeing, good or bad, seeing that all of a sudden they were on eBay before they even went out, kind of situation where they were selling for $200, $300, $500, and going, holy crap. Everybody was watching, my coworkers and stuff, looking at social media going, can you believe that they're listing it at this and this price? And it just kind of floored us, and just kind of, we didn't expect to have that big of a response.
Do you think the products are largely successful because of social media?
I think social media definitely has a lot to do with it, especially because, everybody's showing it, and there's people that want to be the first ones to get it, or the first ones that are even in the know, right? So, I heard they're going to have a blah, blah, blah mug, and even if they can sneak a little picture of it, which I know it happened once, that I looked at the picture. I'm going, someone took a picture in my cubicle and shared it.
Oh no!
Because I recognized my cubicle walls, and I'm going, that should never have gotten out. But basically, someone walked by and took a picture and shared it with someone, and that ended up on social media. But again,
does
depending on your
Disney
perspective, good or bad.
like interrogate you about that now that there's a photo on the internet of your cubicle?
Oh well, the good thing is that it was in when I had just moved into the cubicle, so you couldn't see anything else. It was just the fabric of the wall. But knowing that someone took a picture and put it out, that was the bigger concern. There's been times where even cast members go to visit their manager, and there's a piece of paper on their desk, and they'll snap the picture and say, "Oh, look, it might be coming out," and so because again, everybody wants to be the one that gets in before everybody else, right? So and kind of tease it out and be the person that said, "I'm the one that teased it."
I think that would kind of freak me out, like knowing that someone had come into my space and taken photos of something. You're like watching your back now, like.
Well, and what ended up happening after that is that we ended up like, if there's anything that's in production and we have to kind of keep it under wraps, would get locked in our not supply closet, but where we keep all our samples and all that stuff. So it's the sample room. So we kept everything locked in the sample room, and only like 3 people had the keys. So there's no way that people were going to go in and just randomly take pictures. But it was part of like, I get the fervor. I get people wanting to be the first ones to be able to show something off. But at the same time, what if we're going to make changes to it? What if we change the glaze or whatever, right?
Yep.
You don't necessarily want people to share that information, and then when it comes out, well, that's not what we saw, and, or having them like poo-poo it at the beginning so that it already gets negative responses before it's even come out.
Meanwhile, you have 8,000 of them showing up from a shipping container overseas.
Yeah, and ultimately, we just wanted to keep it under wraps so that when the time came, everybody knew at the same time. Everybody knew when it was coming, and we had a set date and all that stuff. And it kind of, in our opinion, in my opinion especially, it's part of what kept it kind of fun, and kept everybody involved. It wasn't, you weren't segregating anything to one specific group or a specific demographic. So you're trying to still make it inclusive for everybody, so that everybody sees it at once. Everybody's in on it at once. I think in some respects that's important.
And then the fervor kicks in, and then people start jonesing. They're jonesing.
Because you log into Facebook, and even if you just see one picture of a mug, you're like, oh, here it comes, and then that wave comes of people sharing the information they heard, or someone said this and that, and all of a sudden that all kind of blows up on there.
There's here's kind of an odd question. Not talking about Disney in regards to their intellectual property or anything, but you as a designer, were you nervous once the mug started catching on, and small local artisans started just kind of taking Disney's property and making their own mugs? Were you ever nervous that like making some of these mugs that someone else was going to do a small batch, knowing that you can be way more detailed on 30 mugs than you can 7,000?
Well, someone did actually. I think it's the Jack Skellington mug. I called it that, but you remember what I said.
It's not Jack Skellington.
The not Jack Skellington mug, but he was selling it on like eBay and stuff as a Jack Skellington mug. And what he did was cast a mold from the actual mug and then reproduce them in plastic. And I think that's the only time that I kind of took it up to legal and had to issue a cease and desist, and they had to destroy. But it happens. I mean, this one, the Gargoyle, the first edition, is a perfect example. I've never seen the knockoff happen on such a large scale.
Dude, that thing was hideous.
It was hideous, but
that's not a normal knockoff.
It's still selling on AliExpress, and
Oh, really?
Yeah. And people try to sell it as the authentic thing, but they don't show the pictures where there's like that little, basically it's a stainless steel dipping cup that they shoved in there.
Yeah, it's not even like a functional ceramic.
Yeah, so when people actually posted that, I was like, what? And it's resin. It's not even ceramic. But
Trying to find it, but it's eluding me. But we
sometimes
can
you
look
get
at we can look at the this bad boy, this beautiful, glorious mug here.
and they would show that, and but the thing had big old bug eyes and all these, it was just so hideous.
I don't even know how they managed to take something that's that cool and turn it into something so.
I think someone ascribed to that unwritten rule that's a total load of BS, which is, if you change it, like, and the number always changes, but if you change it 10%,
10%, it's no longer.
They can't come after you because it's all BS. if someone can prove that you still stole their IP, then you can go after them. That's just the way that works. And but I think that making the bug eyes and all that stuff must have been their attempt at trying to justify that. But there's tons of people out there that not even replicate Disney stuff, but they replicate a lot of stuff that Tiki Farm makes. You go, AliExpress is a good example. Go on there, type Tiki mugs, and you'll be surprised what you see, because they have stuff you're going, wait a minute, that's sold at Kowloon, and this one's sold here and there. And, they're selling it as authentic. And unfortunately, what happens sometimes is the actual factory, they may have an overage, and they just put it on like AliExpress to sell, which they're not supposed to do. But, how do you police all of that all the time?
Yeah, especially in a different country under different jurisdiction, and
yeah,
it gets complicated fast. Specifically, this gargoyle, this came out last year, so I believe this was the first mug. Although now I'm saying that it could be the boat, but after the pandemic. So, do you have any idea like when you started working on this mug?
On this gargoyle mug?
Yeah.
Right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and a lot of things shut down. I stayed to keep the work moving. So this was one of the ones that I actually kept the work moving. So I was working with my VP at the time because we were kind of the only ones there. And this and a few other things, this is what I'm working on. This is what I think we should do. And with this one, the big difference is not only is it a cool mug, but we wanted to do something different and more innovative, and those were those swizzle sticks. So I know a lot of people out there know that it's the Griders, but I think that some people don't realize it's a 2-person team. It's Mike Grider, that's the artisan and the metalsmith, and his wife helping him do all that stuff. So the little LED torch inserts, they make them in-house, in their studio. They cast those metal pieces, they cut the swizzle stick stems, they assemble all that together, they patina it all together. It's just them. It's, they may hire someone to occasionally help, but it's really just them. So, understanding from a cost standpoint, they were a little more expensive than a plastic swizzle stick, but the perceived value is significant. So being able to bring like cast metal swizzle sticks combined with your ceramic piece, we hadn't done that before. And it was like, hey, we should really take this risk because it's going to be super cool and people are going to love it.
I mean, honestly, the cost of the mug and the 2 swizzles is probably, just the 2 swizzles is worth that.
Yeah, and that's where we've kind of had a challenge at Disney too, is, being a tiki file myself, going, what? We're still selling our tikis way under market value. You have 3 Dots and a Dash that are selling mugs that are over $100. You have all these other tiki bars that are selling most of their mugs over $100. And when we were setting them so low, with this one, I was like, let's put these metal swizzle sticks and sell it for a higher price. And of course, there's people that were a little bit apprehensive in terms of whether or not it was going to be worth selling, and if people were going to buy it at the higher price point. And we know, and as you know, as
they did,
they did, and people love it. And it's like, all right, how can we up the ante even further? because now we're not just selling a ceramic mug, but we're pairing things with it that are still of value in that realm.
It's cool that it kind of gives you more artistic liberties. Once you have, a bigger budget, you can sell it for a certain amount of money. Now you can go to someone in the United States, a duo, and make a deal with them at a rate that they're actually going to be able to do it. I never would have imagined that Disney would work with small artisans. I just assumed that it would always be big factories overseas.
Well, and part of it, especially after the pandemic, part of it had a lot to do with what can we do not in China, and that's not just Disney. It's all kinds of companies out there. You had that PCB shortage, so you have people, like Apple was eating up all the circuit boards because their iPhone was going to come out. So the guy that there's a product I bought called BusyBox that basically lets people know, and you could like program it on your phone if you're in a meeting or whatever else. The thing I was supposed to get it before the pandemic, and I ended up not getting it until earlier this year, because everyone was buying up the circuit boards that they had supposedly had guaranteed to buy, and they didn't have them anymore. So then they had to go on a quest, and they're just getting circuit boards from whoever they could get, which still causes problems because they have to rewrite their code so that it works on that particular circuit board. So for Disney, it was a good idea to look at opportunities that are local. And sometimes you need to be able to turn something around quicker. Like, for example, I showed you this mug that we did for Disney several years. That mug is an off-the-shelf mug, but that mug is made here in the United States. So the turnaround time obviously is much faster. Same with the imprinted buckets and the coffee mugs and stuff. Those are made here in Pennsylvania. So your speed to market is definitely going to be faster. So it's a matter of like, especially if you're going to build a program and you're going to launch in 6 months or less, you definitely want to get something in the US. So what are your options? So, part of it is that. And I personally like the idea of the Swizzle Sticks being more artisanal rather than being, just a stamped out piece of plastic. I'm not saying that it's a cheap thing, but it is compared to a cast metal piece, right?
I think it does specifically matter in regards to the intellectual property of the Haunted Mansion, because it gives it that, you can see all the like different tones and stuff in these Swizzle Sticks that just wouldn't be there otherwise. It looks old. It looks like something that would be in the Haunted Mansion.
And that was important. So when we worked with the grinders, I was talking to Carissa, and she showed me all these different like finishes that she thought that Michael did that she thought would be great. And it was awesome because then I kind of went into my boss's office and said, here's the finishes, which ones do we like? And we customized the finishes to fit the design of what we were looking at. So it worked. And like you said, they paired together. It looked aged. It had those the look that we were after. And I'm not sure if we would have been able to even have that level of communication if we were dealing with a manufacturer out of China. And, looking for cast metal at the time was virtually impossible because none of our other vendors could do that in China. So, I think Holden actually, over at Tiki Farm, actually gave me their name. Oh, you should talk to the grinders. And that's really where that all started. And, again,
hardest working man in Tiki.
That's right. That's right. He's a good friend of mine, and he is a wealth of knowledge, and he's also been helpful for Disney to find even local opportunities. So it may be things that don't necessarily benefit him in the long term, but finding, like, I was looking at local manufacturers, as in here in the United States, and having those guys out of like Oregon potentially produce stuff, and they can produce stuff. They just, if the quantities are over a certain amount, they end up pushing it out to China. So,
and it's half a dozen of another.
Yeah. So there's a good opportunity, especially if you're doing low run stuff. But, I definitely was always open to trying to find local opportunities.
I know you. So you departed the company back in February. Were you involved on the glaze of the newest gargoyle, or would that have been after you?
Well, I had made recommendations before I left on a few things. So this may have been one of the glazes that we had chosen, and I made a recommendation, but ultimately it was up to them to choose.
Yep.
But I think this is one of the ones that we looked at and collaboratively
I love it.
landed on. I really like this color. We had talked about this particular one having that kind of like, the sea, the ocean greenish blue color. So it had more of that like oxidized copper kind of look to it.
Okay, I got a question, Marcus. Now that I have you on the spot, I got you live, I got you cornered. I can ask you from a collector standpoint. One of the Halloween mugs that we haven't talked about yet is the Hatbox Ghost, which I love. Look at this gorgeous Hatbox Ghost. One probably most people's favorite character from the Haunted Mansion. I think I can say that pretty uncontroversially. And then I believe these were the first edition. They look pretty close. The second edition that came out, like the mug at Grotto and the mug at Enchanted Tiki Bar were very different in terms of glaze. So when you put them on a shelf, they don't necessarily match. Was that an intentional choice, or was that like a manufacturing thing?
The changes of the glaze colors afterwards was intentional, and it had to do a lot with, even though those two are different, because the faces on one, and then the on the head, and then the faces in the hat box on the other. There was that argument, not just within Disney, but also amongst collectors, that the colors were too close for some people not being able to differentiate that. So when we went to the second edition, or the consensus was, let's make them different colors so that it's clearly, this is the Grotto one, regardless of where the face is. This is the Enchanted Tiki Bar one, regardless of where the face is. Because they wanted to, it's too much like the other one.
Are they very much aware? So like the team, when they're developing things at this point, they know that there are collectors that want both. And so you want them to stand out so that you have people buying two mugs and hitting up Jay McGuire and the Trader Sam's trading group.
I think of Jay every time that I had come up with the design, because I wanted to make sure he could see the difference between colors after having all those drinks.
Oh, okay. so that's why, guys. That's why there's a distinct difference between this one and this one. It's just because Jay McGuire needs a little extra assistance down at the Grotto. Dude, this has been fun. I've had so much fun chatting with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for hanging out with me. I got to do one more giveaway. Some cocktail umbrellas from Tiny Umbrella. So we're going to give away 2 packs of cocktail umbrellas. The way this works is I'm going to ask a question, and the first person to get it correct in the comments will get to take home 2 cocktail umbrellas. But what should the question be? What do you think, Marcus? What could we come up with for a sneaky question?
Well, you got a good sneaky question in when you're showing the addition on that mug. I'm trying to think what else.
There was something with the hitchhiking ghosts, but I assume that was like a manufacturing thing on the black one. Let's do you know what we asked when Trader Sam's Grotto opened? Let's ask when Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar opened. So the first person to guess that correctly in the comments will get to take home some tiny umbrellas for their cocktails. When did Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar open? And does your design team also do all the mugs for Oga's Cantina?
Yeah.
Or did it?
Yeah, actually, so anything that touches food is what the novelty team worked on. So if it if it was a glow cube, if it was a straw, if it was pretty much all the barware that's in there. So that's where, because when Ogo's opened, kind of the mentality changed. So instead of really talking about developing tiki mugs, we were developing barware. So they're very, especially the indoor one, is very tiki adjacent, But then we also did like that one over at the Grand Californian Hotel. Even though it was arts and crafts, it's like a tiki cousin. At least that's how some people perceived it as. But at the end of the day, it's straight up barware. It's a take home thing that a drink is being served in. So the idea was to look at things beyond ceramics. So can you do ceramic? Can you do resin, wood, metal? So it's kind of looking at how that works and how you can expand that. So even the goblets and stuff that they have on the Star Wars Hotel, I don't know if you've seen those. It says Chandrila Star Lines or something on the bottom, but it's a metal handle with the glass globe. And you saw those in like now a couple of shows, but it was definitely in Solo. So we were tasked to replicate those so that they were in story, right? So it's also that's why the barware category is so much broader, because it crosses a whole bunch of different intellectual properties, but also materials.
Does that include like coasters and stuff?
Yeah. Well, the coasters that are out there right now, I want to say that Jeff Granito did those. So I just set them up and sent them out to print, but I believe he's the one that did the design work on that.
He's one of the nicest guys in Tiki.
Yeah, he's really great to work with. He did a lot of work for me, not mostly the Tiki world. He actually did a lot of the flat art buckets and mugs for me, as well as a few other things. But since he is a freelancer, I do use him even now with the company that I'm with, because he's a really outstanding illustrator. I love his work.
We did get the correct answer. So Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar opened in 2011. So congratulations, Jamie Laidlaw. You're getting some cocktail umbrellas. Send me an email, admin@searchfortiki.com, with your mailing address so that I can ship those out. So Marcus, you mentioned your new job. What's next for Marcus?
Well, part of it is expanding kind of the creativity in terms of what we're doing, right? And looking at things now from a bigger scale. So for me, like the big buckets that are my responsibility are predominantly theme parks and cinema and some retail. But, now it's the idea of looking at these premium products, not just in a theme park environment, but in like, coming to a movie theater near you kind of thing, right? And it could be a fancy popcorn bucket. In the future, it could potentially also be barware. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if you go to your local movie theater and, you reserve your seat like we do nowadays? You can order some cocktails at the bar, and, the Jaws cocktail ends up coming in a Jaws Tiki mug. And I'm using that one because we're not doing that, but there's a Jaws mug out there and I'm making up the drink.
Yeah.
But again, wouldn't it be a cool idea if you go to your favorite movie theater and they have classic tiki mugs that tie into a movie that came out 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, or one that even ties into a film that may be coming out. So personally, one of the things that always drove me a little bit crazy is to go to a movie theater and going, there's nothing super cool that I can buy. And like last year when Ghostbusters came out, another company made this Ecto 1 as a popcorn bucket, and they had flashy lights, and I'm going, that's what I'm talking about. So, that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of the future of what we're looking at is, how do you plus up the business, not just in cinema, but, what cool things can you bring to Universal, Frankie? What cool things can you bring to Hershey Park, or, all these new parks?
So are you working for like multiple different theme parks and cinemas and.
So the marketing company that I work for, our clients are like Universal and Hershey Park, and a lot of other theme parks globally. Same with in the cinema business. A lot of the clients are the big and small cinema retailers globally. So there's a presence in India. There's a presence in Asia. There's a presence in Europe. There's a presence here in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil. So we get to touch all that stuff.
Dude, that sounds awesome. I really hope that you don't get too far away from the cocktail mugs, just because I love those. I'd love to see some other cocktail mugs show up. I do think it's interesting, the idea of like movie theaters, because movie theaters are a little bit in a bind right now, A, because of the pandemic, but B, just because home cinema technology has improved so much. So that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, and maybe the opportunity to get you to go see a movie is, we launched a movie theater launches Jurassic Park.
Yep.
And, during that time frame that the movie comes out, AMC offers a Jurassic Park mug. And you can only get it at the AMC.
I would totally go to the movies for a Jurassic Park mug.
100%. And, and there's a lot of other opportunities. It doesn't have to even be necessarily like a tiki mug, right? It could be
popcorn bucket,
a glass mug. It could be a tankard. It could be, all kinds of things that could tie into a film somehow. Wouldn't it be cool if you could do some sort of drink vessel for John Wick? And what would that be? And that's where your challenge is too, is to think about what can I do for a particular film that would be really cool and people are going to want to get it. But to your point, the challenge of like, I'll wait till streaming. Oh wait, I can't get that mug that looks really, really cool unless I go to the movie theater. So I guess I'll go. And
there's like two things. There's the culture of convenience, which is the home theater stuff, and then there's the Instagrammable moments where like, I want to go get that popcorn bucket, A, because I want it, but also because then I can take a picture of it and post it online and be like, look at me, I'm so cool. I got the popcorn bucket and you didn't.
And you see those people that post that. I mean, I knew about the Ecto one before it got posted on social media, but people will post what's coming out. Like I know that there's been some Instagram posts on the cool Black Panther stuff that's coming out in like Brazil and Mexico and stuff. And it's like, whoa, sometimes it's not our stuff, sometimes it's someone else's, and it's still cool. It's amazing to see what some of those things are doing out there. So,
are you a nerd at heart?
Oh, I'm
the deepest kind of nerd.
I mean, I used to have a $40 a week comic book habit, and from a inflation scaling perspective, back in the mid to late 90s, that's a lot of comic books every week. So I have bins and bins of comic books. So when we bought Marvel, I lost it. I was like, oh my god. So why do I push stuff like, I'm sure you guys saw the Infinity Iron Man Infinity Gauntlet. That was the inner nerd in me was just crying tears of joy when I got someone to approve it so we can manufacture it. Same with Infinity Gauntlet. I made that Infinity Gauntlet. I knew it was going to be a seller. They didn't order that many, and then it sold out, and they ordered more. But the nerd inside me is like, no, buy this stuff. You're gonna
buy it by the thousands.
It's gonna be amazing. All my fellow Marvel nerds out in the world will want this. I can guarantee you they're gonna want it. So
when they make those decisions, is it entirely based on we don't want to order too much and then be stuck with it, or is some of it also like they kind of want it to sell out because it's
you definitely want it to sell out. You don't want to sit on inventory, right? So it's a matter of trying to figure out where that sweet spot is, and also the context. So like with like Avengers Campus, some of these things launched on the day that it opened, but they weren't tied into a film. So that the film tie-ins, there's a certain amount that you're probably going to want to order, and we can historically see how much of one thing got sold. So they kind of look at it and go, all right, well, we know this is the number that we want. Do we bring it up? Do we bring it down? And then make an ordering decision. But, things like the Thanos Gauntlet caught people off guard, so they adjusted accordingly. So as we move forward, the learning was when it has a wow factor like this and it's exclusive and nobody else is making something like this, then that we should do a
More.
higher number. It doesn't always work, but if you think about it, like the Iron Man one, everybody loved it. It was hot, but you don't have the same appeal and market to like Buzz Lightyear, so that may or may not be selling at the same pace. It's still a cool design, but people that love Iron Man versus people that love Buzz Lightyear, there's a difference.
Do you know if the numbers on the edition sizes of the Trader Sam's mugs have steadily increased?
Oh, we've run the gamut. We hit a certain number and we thought we needed to order more, so we went higher, and then that was too high, and then it got scaled back. So it's not.
That was the elephants.
I don't remember. I want to say it was maybe the Nutcracker, but
okay.
You kind of learn where your numbers are, because you can't just apply. This is a good example. You can't just say, all right, we're going to order X amount, because the last one we did the Hitchhiking Ghost and we sold 8,000, and so we're going to do 10,000 of the Mickey Nutcracker or whatever it is, and then find that it doesn't sell, because it has to also do with the IP that you're developing, and that's the filter that sometimes I know I forget sometimes. Others I'm sure do as well. You start thinking in terms of, are people going to want Mickey on the Tiki mug? Probably not, because it skews young, so that may not be the best property to put on there. That with the fact that you're not supposed to put characters with alcoholic beverages. So
yeah,
even if it's just Mickey ears, is it something that people are going to want versus Haunted Mansion characters, Monstro, and whatnot? So sometimes it's that filter that you have to put in there and going, all right, how many people love that intellectual property? If we did, the Captain Hook pirate ship Chicken of the Sea thing from many years ago, would people buy it? And but are they buying it from a nostalgia standpoint because they remember it, or are they buying it because they think it's cool? And is there a big enough demographic to buy it? Because if your nostalgia people are the only ones buying it, it's a super small group, then is it worth ordering a decent quantity?
Yeah. Dude, it's been a pleasure. I want to be respectful of your time. Somehow we're already past an hour and a half.
It's all good.
Lost track of time with you. But we got a mug to give away. It's a pretty cool mug. It is the first edition Tales from the Black Lagoon for Strongwater. And it was manufactured by our sponsor, Tiki Farm, along with Plantation Rum, who sponsors 13 Nights of Tiki Frights. Thank you to both Plantation Rum and Tiki Farm for sponsoring us. We could not do 13 Nights of Tiki Frights without you. And with that said, let's give away a mug. We did pull the winner before, so dramatic round circle motion. The winner is at Ghouls Who Tiki. This winner was pulled from Instagram at Ghouls Who Tiki. Congratulations, you've won the first edition Tales from the Black Lagoon mug from Strongwater, Anaheim. Congratulations. And then Marcus is Marcus Gons at Marcus Gons on Instagram.
Yep.
And Marcus, I have to say, on a personal note, I got into Tiki through Trader Sam's and Oga's Cantina. I have gone down a deep rabbit hole over the past few years, and I've had a chance to talk to dozens of artists, including you now, which is, a dream. But I wouldn't have gone down this path. I wouldn't have created the searchfortiki.com if I hadn't fallen in love with Trader Sam's and the cocktail mugs. So thank you, Marcus.
Thanks to you, and thanks to everybody that loves this the genre and enjoys the opportunity to collect. Because I think you may have mentioned it in the bio stuff earlier, but for me, Tiki has been an affinity even since I was a child. I remember my dad taking us multiple times to a restaurant called the Kona Hawaii down the street from Disney. It isn't there anymore, but even like Benihana did like the Buddha mugs and all that stuff. But I loved going to that place because you had the menu that had all those cool mugs, and Dad, I really want, and the whole fact that they were alcoholic meant nothing to me. because I just wanted the mug.
You just wanted the mug.
I wanted that cool mug that looked like a coconut or it looked like a little tiki dude, not even knowing what those tiki dudes were. But the visuals of the show with the lava projections and then having these tiki mugs, that was always a thing when I was little. It was like, I can't wait to get one of those. And I want one of those. And then fast forward, like, 25, 30 years later, going, all right, you need to come up with some designs for these and, do something that people might want to buy. And it's like, of course, the 7-year-old in me and all that was like, oh my God, what? The opportunity to do something that like really harkens back to my childhood. And I mean, for me, it was always a labor of love. And it was like, talk about tapping the inner nerd. We're tapping the nerdiness on every level with all the things that I had the opportunity to do.
It's so nostalgic. It's basically like a toy. Like we call it a mug and it holds alcohol, an adult beverage.
It's an adult toy.
At the end of the day, it's a toy that we put on our shelves. And
wait till you see. I mean, there's still some stuff that I've done that Disney still hasn't launched. There's going to be some amazing things that aren't necessarily in the tiki world, but they're going to blow your mind. You're just, people are going to look at it and just kind of go, what? So, obviously I'm not at liberty to share it today, but once
they come out, you got to share them.
Well, and that's what I try to do when it becomes public. If someone else shares it, then I will post either on Instagram or on Facebook saying, hey, look what's coming out. So you'll get, not necessarily a sneak peek, but at least, you get to see what's coming. So like today, I just posted what I mentioned earlier with the Mr. Toad popcorn bucket. It's super, super cool. And then, I think they just launched Shuri's Gauntlet over there at California Adventure. So that's also kind of like the idea of the Iron Man one, except it's the Shuri one. So it looks like a panther. I still think it's cool. I don't care if people don't buy it. I think it's awesome. But as soon as someone posts it, and sometimes the Disney food blog posts it, the like actual Disney one. And I'll share that.
What you mean, not those other ones that I don't even want to mention on here because I don't want to give them publicity?
Right. No, Disney proper's been doing a good job of posting a lot of things that come up. Like when they did the Elliot and the Turtle for the electrical parade, they even did like little stop motion videos, so it looked like it was moving along. I was like, that is so cool. I had already left Disney as we were transitioning, but man, when those things came out, I was just so excited because, again, it's nostalgia for what I grew up with, but also it was near and dear to my heart. So figuring out how to make it work and have it look like their little light points and all that stuff, it was a lot of fun. And then to see everybody like go crazy and want it was the cherry on top.
That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Totally.
And it's hard. I imagine when you're like in a room and you're just designing things, and like you feel passionate about it, but that's different than actually seeing people go bananas for these popcorn buckets and these tiki mugs and all that stuff. So it's got to be a good feeling.
It does. It helps justify like going through the challenges and stuff that go behind making those things. So
of which there are many.
Yeah. I mean, again, Disney's a big company. So, it's irrelevant about good or bad. It's just there's a process, and the process has a lot of layers, and there's a lot of people involved. So bringing something to life can potentially have a lot of challenges. But, at the end of the day, to your point, it's what the guests / fans enjoy and how they respond. So for me, seeing something blow up on Instagram or on Facebook, I like that. I like seeing everybody go crazy and go, oh my God, check this out. It does this and it does that. And, it lights up or it has music or whatever. It's those little touches, again, going back to like the Jungle Cruise boat there, is the little touches that the fans are the ones that notice. And it's what brings it over the top. And it's like, well, it's a cool thing. But now that it has this other thing, I'm definitely
I have to get it. 100%. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for chatting with me. I can't wait to see what you come up with your new career. Cheers to you and 32 years with the Disney company and to all the work you did with the amazing Tim Woolweber on the Disney Creative Team. And with that, guys, thanks for tuning in to 13 Nights of Tiki Frights. We will see you tomorrow. We got another show lined up for you at the same time, and a new giveaway will go live around 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.